The girl was screaming, tears cutting tracks through her makeup, begging the man in the suit to stop. "He's a hero!" she wailed, clutching her father's arm. But the man in the suit just laughed, dangling a faded set of dog tags over a puddle of spilled beer. "A hero? This old man is a janitor, sweetheart. Look at him. He's a nobody." The old man, Elias, didn't defend himself. He just stared at the floor, accepting the humiliation with a silence that felt heavy, like the calm before a mortar strike. I watched from my booth, coffee going cold in my hand. The girl thought he was weak. The bully thought he was a victim. I was the only one in the room who noticed that the old man's hands weren't shaking out of fear. They were shaking because he was trying not to kill them. I didn't know then that a senator was waiting for him in D.C., or that a wall of black granite was waiting to scream the truth his daughter never knew. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from. Drop your city and mile marker. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The rain in Virginia doesn't wash the world clean, it just makes the grit stick harder. I was 4 hours deep into a haul that started in Jacksonville, carrying a flatbed of structural steel beams that weighed enough to make my Peterbilt groan on the inclines. The wipers were fighting a losing battle against the downpour, slapping back and forth in a rhythm that was starting to give me a migraine. I needed coffee, I needed a sandwich that didn't taste like sawdust, and I needed 5 minutes of silence. I pulled into the rusty Skillet off I-95. It was one of those old-school joints with yellow lights, cracked vinyl booths, and a smell that was equal parts bacon grease and diesel fuel. I parked the rig in the back row, the air brakes hissing a long, tired sigh as I killed the engine. I didn't want trouble, I never do. I just wanted to eat and stare at the wall. I walked in, shaking the water off my coat. The place was quiet. A few other drivers were scattered around nursing mugs. I took a booth in the corner facing the door. Habit, not paranoia. You spend enough time sleeping in rest stops, you learn to watch the exits. Then the old man and the girl walked in. He moved with a stiff, painful dignity, like his joints were made of rusted iron. He was wearing a suit that was 20 years out of style, but pressed sharp enough to cut paper. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, but the heels were worn down to nothing. He held a small, battered wooden box against his chest with both hands. The girl, Sarah, I'd learn later, was fussing over him. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from worrying about someone you love every minute of the day. "Sit here, Dad," she said, guiding him to a booth near the center. "Are you hungry? You need to eat before we get to D.C. "I'm not hungry, Sarah," the old man mumbled. His voice was deep, a gravel rumble that sounded unused. "We shouldn't go. It's a mistake." "It's not a mistake," she said softly, sliding into the seat opposite him. "The senator's office called 3 times. They want you there for the unveiling." "I was a clerk, Sarah," he sighed, looking down at the table. "I filed papers. I don't belong on a wall with the real ones." I watched them over the rim of my cup. I've seen that look in a man's eyes before. It's not modesty. It's the crushing weight of survivor's guilt. He was lying to her, and she loved him too much to press him on it. Then the door banged open. A group of 4 men stumbled in, bringing a gust of cold wind and noise with them. They were young, loud, and dressed in that business casual style that screams junior lobbyists or congressional staffers blowing off steam. They smelled like expensive scotch and entitlement. The leader was a guy I'll call Brad. He had a haircut that cost more than my weekly fuel budget, and a smile that looked like a shark sensing blood. He scanned the room, ignoring the empty tables, and locked eyes on Sarah. "Table for 4, Brad shouted at the waitress, snapping his fingers. "We want the center booth. Better lighting." "Sir, that table is taken," the waitress said, looking exhausted. "There's plenty of room in the back." "I don't want the back," Brad sneered. He walked right up to Elias's table. "Hey, Pops, you done?" Elias didn't look up. He just tightened his grip on the wooden box. "We just sat down," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. "Please, just leave us alone." "I don't like your tone, sweetheart," Brad laughed, leaning one hand on their table. He looked at his buddies, who were snickering. I think Grandpa here is past his bedtime anyway. Look at him. He's practically asleep. He reached out and tapped the wooden box in Elias's hands. What you got there, treasure chest? Don't touch it, Elias whispered. What? Brad leaned in, cupping his ear. Speak up, or did you leave your hearing aid at the nursing home? He flicked the box, hard. Elias's hands were old and slow. The box slipped from his grip and clattered onto the linoleum floor. The latch snapped. It didn't spill gold, it spilled memories. A few black and white photos, a faded ribbon, and a Silver Star medal that spun on the floor before settling in the dirt near Brad's polished loafer. The room went dead silent. Brad looked down at the medal. He kicked it. Just a little nudge, sliding it under the table like it was trash. Wow, Brad laughed. Stolen valor much? Where'd you buy that, Pops? eBay. My dad actually served, okay? He doesn't carry his participation trophies around in a lunchbox. Sarah scrambled out of the booth, dropping to her knees to retrieve the medal. Stop it! He earned that. He served in Vietnam. Doing what? Peeling potatoes? Brad sneered. He stepped in front of Sarah, blocking her. He looked down at her, and his expression shifted from mocking to predatory. You know, you're kinda cute when you're defending the senile. Why don't you leave the old man here and come have a drink with us? We can explain what real power looks like. He reached out and grabbed her upper arm. The sound of my coffee cup hitting the table was the only warning he got. I stood up. I'm 6'4" and built like the trucks I drive. I don't run. I walk with purpose. My boots hit the floor with a heavy, deliberate rhythm as I crossed the diner. Let go of her, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was low, the rumble of a storm just before the lightning strikes. Brad turned around, looking annoyed. He sized me up, flannel shirt, grease on my jeans, trucker cap. He saw a nobody. Private conversation, big man, Brad spat. Go back to your feed trough. I said, let go. Brad laughed. He released Sarah, but only to shove me. He put both hands on my chest and pushed. It was like trying to shove a mountain. I didn't move a millimeter. Brad's smile faltered. Touch me again, I said, and you'll need a straw to eat your dinner for the next 6 months. His buddies bristled. Hey, you threatening him? One shouted, stepping forward. I'm promising, I said. I looked at Sarah. Get the medal, get your dad. Go to the car. She isn't going anywhere, Brad screamed. His ego was fractured now, and that made him stupid. He swung a wild, looping punch at my head. Action isn't about anger, it's about mechanics. I stepped inside the arc of his swing. My left hand shot up, deflecting his arm, while my right hand clamped onto his shoulder like a hydraulic claw. I didn't punch him, I just squeezed. I dug my thumb into the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. Brad shrieked, his knees buckling instantly. Outside, I growled. We're not wrecking the ladies' diner. I marched him backward, using his own pain to steer him. I threw him through the front door. He stumbled out into the rain, slipping on the wet concrete and landing hard on his backside. His 3 friends roared and charged me. Bad move. The first one, a heavy-set guy in a blazer, tried to tackle me. I sidestepped, grabbed the back of his collar and his belt, and used his own momentum to run him face first into the doorframe. He went down like a sack of cement. The second one tried a kick. I caught his foot, twisted it, and shoved him back into the third guy. They went down in a tangle of limbs and expensive shoes. I walked out the door, wiping my hands. Brad was scrambling to his feet, his face red with humiliation and rage. Do you know who I am? He screamed, backing toward a sleek black SUV parked in the fire lane. My father is a district attorney. I can have you buried. You're not burying anyone tonight, I said, standing on the steps, the rain soaking my shirt. Get in your car. Leave, before I decide to finish this. Brad glared at me, hate radiating off him in waves. He motioned to his friends who were dragging themselves out of the diner, groaning. They piled into the SUV and 2 other modified pickup trucks parked alongside it. They peeled out of the lot, tires screeching, disappearing into the dark rain. I took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline settle. My knuckles throbbed. I turned back to the diner. Elias was standing by the booth, holding the wooden box tight against his chest. Sarah was trembling. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I said. "Just get him out of here." "We're going," she said, grabbing her purse. "Come on, Dad, the car is right there." "No," Elias said. He wasn't looking at Sarah. He was looking out the window at the highway. "Dad?" "They didn't leave, Sarah," Elias said. His voice was different now. The stutter was gone. The hesitation was gone. It was the voice of a man who used to read terrain for a living. "They're circling. They went up to the overpass to turn around." I looked out the window. He was right. I saw the headlights of the black SUV slow down on the service road, turning back toward us. "They're coming back," I said, "and they aren't coming back to talk." "My car," Sarah started, panic rising in her voice. "It's just an old sedan. They'll run you off the road before you hit the mile marker," I said. "Men like that don't take a loss. They escalate." I looked at my truck. The Peterbilt stood under the parking lot lights, massive and solid. "You're not taking the car," I said. "What?" Sarah blinked. "Grab your things," I said, pulling my keys out. "You're riding with me." "We can't ask you to do that," Elias said, straightening up. "You've done enough." "You didn't ask," I said. "I offered. Marine rules. I don't leave a man behind, and I definitely don't leave him for a pack of wolves like that." I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed Sarah's bag and ushered them out the door. The rain was coming down in sheets now. We ran to the truck. I helped Elias up into the passenger seat. He moved faster than I expected, grabbing the grab handle with a grip that still had some steel in it. Sarah climbed into the sleeper berth in the back. I fired up the engine. The 600 horsepower diesel roared to life, shaking the cab. It's a sound that usually calms me, but tonight it sounded like a war drum. I locked the doors and released the air brakes. "Buckle up," I said, throwing the transmission into gear. As I pulled out of the lot, I checked my West Coast mirrors. 3 sets of headlights swung onto the road behind us. The black SUV and the 2 pickups. They weren't hiding. They flipped on their high beams, blinding white light flooding my cab. "They're in formation," Elias said, watching the mirror. "Standard pursuit, 1 on the tail, 2 flanking." "I see 'em," I said. We hit the on-ramp, merging onto the dark highway. I hammered down on the throttle, skipping gears, trying to get the heavy load up to speed. The engine screamed as the turbo spooled up. The black SUV shot forward in the passing lane. It pulled up alongside my driver's side door. I looked down. Brad was in the passenger seat, window down despite the rain, screaming something I couldn't hear over the wind. He was holding something, a baseball bat, a tire iron. He gestured for his driver to come over. "He's trying to pit you," Elias shouted. "He's coming into the lane. Hold on!" I didn't swerve away. That's what they wanted, to push me onto the soft shoulder where the mud would suck the rig in and flip us. I held the line. The SUV drifted into my lane, trying to bully 80,000 pounds of steel. I gave the wheel a sharp twitch to the left, just a tap, crunch. My front heavy-duty lug nuts tore into the side panels of the SUV like a can opener. Sparks showered the wet asphalt. The SUV driver panicked, jerking the wheel away. The vehicle fishtailed wildly, sliding toward the median grass before correcting. "That's one," I grunted. But the pickups were smarter. They were heavy-duty dualies with brush guards. One roared up on my right side, using the breakdown lane to pull even with the trailer tires. "He's going for the trailer lines," I realized. If they cut the air lines, the trailer brakes would lock up, and we'd jackknife at 70 miles an hour. "Jack!" Sarah screamed from the back. "What are they doing?" "Trying to kill us," Elias said calmly. "Jack, bridge ahead. 2 miles, narrows to 2 lanes. "I know it. If they get in front of us before that bridge, they can box us in and stop us dead." I looked at the speedometer. 75 miles. The truck was shaking. The load was heavy. The pickup on the right surged forward, trying to cut in front of my bumper. "He's committing," Elias warned. I dropped a gear, sending the RPMs redlining. "Not today." I didn't brake. I accelerated. The massive grille of the Peterbilt ate up the space the pickup was trying to take. The pickup driver looked in his mirror, saw a wall of chrome and lights bearing down on him, and flinched. He slammed on his brakes, dropping back behind the trailer. We hit the bridge. The concrete barriers flashed by in a blur. We cleared them, Sarah cried, sounding relieved. Not yet, I said, scanning the road ahead. The radio crackled. I hadn't turned it on, but the CB was alive. Brake 19. Got a situation mile marker 42, road blocked. Looks like private vehicles. I squinted through the rain. Half a mile ahead, 3 more trucks were parked sideways across the highway. Not semis, more lifted pickups and SUVs. They had formed a barricade. Men were standing in front of the headlights holding bats and chains. It's a kill box, Elias said softly. Hammer and anvil. We're the iron. I checked the mirrors. The 3 chase vehicles were right on my bumper. Blocked front. Blocked rear. Jack, Sarah whispered. Stop the truck. Maybe if we just talk to them. They aren't here to talk, Sarah, I said, my grip tightening on the wheel until the leather creaked. You saw his eyes. He wants to hurt someone. Jack, you have to stop, Elias said. You can't ram a blockade. I looked at the gap between the 2 trucks blocking the road. It was maybe 9 feet wide. My truck is 8.5. I'm not stopping, I said. Jack, Sarah screamed. Get down, I roared. Get on the floor. Elias, head down. I reached up and pulled the air horn cord. The blast ripped through the night, a warning to the men standing on the road. Move or die. I saw them scatter. They realized too late that I wasn't bluffing. I lined up the hood ornament with the center of the gap. I didn't touch the brakes. I floored it. Brace! We hit the gap at 70 miles an hour. The sound of metal shearing against metal is something you feel in your teeth before you hear it. We hit the gap between the 2 blockade trucks at 70 miles an hour, and for a split second, I thought the world had ended. My passenger side mirror clipped the bed of a lifted Ford F-250, shattering into 1,000 diamonds that sprayed back into the night. The Peterbilt shuddered violently, lurching to the left as the trailer tires bounced off a concrete Jersey barrier, but the momentum, 80,000 pounds of American steel, was on our side. We punched through the hole like a bullet through a sheet of plywood. Clear! Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the roar of the engine. He wasn't cowering. He was leaning forward, watching the mirrors, his eyes scanning for threats with a precision that didn't belong to an office clerk. We made it. Sarah gasped from the sleeper berth, her voice trembling. We made it through the wall, I said, wrestling the steering wheel to keep the rig upright as we fishtailed on the wet asphalt. But we didn't lose them. I checked the driver's side mirror, the only one I had left. The red glow of taillights faded behind us, but then the high beams cut through the darkness again. The black SUV and 2 of the pickups had squeezed through the gap behind us. They were battered, missing headlights and bumpers, but they were still coming, and now they were angry. They're still on us, I said, shifting gears to get the RPMs back in the power band. And now they know we aren't stopping. They'll try to disable the vehicle, Elias said. His voice was calm, almost detached. They can't stop the mass, so they'll attack the control points. Tires, airlines. I glanced at him. The frail old man who had dropped his medal in the diner was gone. In his place sat someone else, someone who knew how to analyze a moving engagement. You seem to know a lot about pursuit tactics for a clerk, Elias, I grunted, eyes glued to the road. I read a lot, he said, but he didn't look at me. Watch your left flank. The SUV is moving up. The black SUV surged forward again. Brad was hanging out the window now. He wasn't holding a bat this time. He was holding a handgun. The muzzle flash lit up the rain like a strobe light. Crack thwack! A bullet slammed into the door panel, inches below the window. Get down! I roared, reaching over to push Elias's head below the dashboard. He's shooting! Sarah, stay on the floor! He's crazy! Sarah screamed. He's going to kill us. He's panicked. Elias said from the floorboard. "He's committed a felony in front of witnesses. He has to end this before we reach a populated area." "Jack, how far to the state line?" 20 miles, I said. "But we won't make it with him taking pot shots at my steer tires. If he hit a front tire at this speed, we'd flip. Game over." "Brake check," Elias commanded. "What?" "He's drafting you to get a clear shot. Hard brake. Force him to swerve or die." It was a combat order, and I followed it. I slammed the brake pedal, engaging the trailer brakes first to keep the line straight, then the tractor brakes. Smoke poured off the drives as the rig rapidly decelerated from 75 to 40 in a heartbeat. The SUV driver didn't react fast enough. He swerved violently to avoid rear-ending the trailer. The SUV spun out across the wet highway, sliding sideways into the median grass. It hit the mud, tipped up on two wheels, and slammed back down, bogged deep in the mire. "Target down," Elias said, pulling himself back up to the seat. "Two left." But the braking maneuver had cost us our momentum. The two pickups roared past us, one on the left, one on the right, and then cut sharply in front of my hood. They slowed down, their brake lights flaring red. "They're boxing the front," I growled, downshifting to find torque. "They're trying to park me." I couldn't ram them. Not from behind at this speed. If I hit them now, their beds would catch my grill, and the wreckage would tangle under my steer axle. I'd lose steering, and we'd all pile into the woods. "Don't let them slow you below 30, Elias warned. "If we stop, we're static targets." "I can't go over them, and I can't go through them," I said, sweat stinging my eyes. The speedometer was dropping. 50, 45, 40. The pickups were matching my speed, slowly tapping their brakes, forcing me to slow down or crash. It was a rolling roadblock, executed by men who had done this before. Then I saw it. Ahead, the orange glow of construction barrels. A lane closed sign. The highway narrowed to a single lane for bridge maintenance. "Choke point," I said, "if I can get ahead of them before the merge." "You don't have the acceleration," Elias said. "Jack, look at the construction site. The barriers." I looked. The lane closure was protected by concrete jersey barriers, but behind them was a flat stretch of gravel where the road crew parked their equipment. An excavator, a bulldozer, and stacks of rebar. "We aren't going to pass them," I said, realizing what I had to do. "We're going to fight them." "Jack, no," Sarah cried. "We can't run forever, Sarah," I said, gripping the wheel. "And I'm not leading these animals to the DC Memorial. We end it here." I waited until the last second. The pickups were focused on blocking the main lanes. They didn't expect a truck this size to go off-road. I yanked the wheel to the right, aiming for the gap between two construction barrels. The Peterbilt roared as we left the pavement. The suspension screamed as we hit the gravel shoulder, mud flying everywhere. I bypassed the roadblock, barreling into the construction staging area. "Hold on!" I slammed on the brakes, sliding the rig sideways in a controlled drift, bringing it to a halt with the trailer acting as a shield against the highway. "Stay in the truck," I ordered, killing the engine and grabbing my tire thumper. "Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." "Jack, there's 6 of them," Elias said, eyeing the tire iron in my hand. "That stick isn't enough. It'll have to do." I kicked the door open and jumped down into the mud. The 2 pickups had screeched to a halt on the highway. Doors flew open. 5 men spilled out. They were shouting, hyped up on adrenaline and rage. They hopped the concrete barrier and came running toward the staging area, and then the black SUV arrived. It had pulled itself out of the mud. It roared into the construction site. Mud caked on its sides and skidded to a stop 20 feet from me. Brad stumbled out. He was wet, muddy, and his expensive suit was ruined. He held the gun loosely in his right hand. "You think you're clever?" Brad screamed, his voice cracking. "You think you can just embarrass me and drive away?" I stood my ground, the rain soaking my flannel shirt, the hickory stick heavy in my hand. "Put the gun down, son, before you do something you can't undo." "I am the law," Brad yelled, waving the pistol. "My father runs this district. I can do whatever I want." "Not tonight," I said. "Get him," Brad ordered his friends. Beat him until he doesn't move." The 5 goons hesitated. They looked at the gun, then at me. "Go!" Brad fired a shot into the dirt near their feet. They charged. I didn't wait. I stepped forward to meet them. The first guy swung a baseball bat. I ducked under the swing, driving the end of my hickory stick into his ribs. He folded with a wheeze. I spun, swinging the stick low, taking the legs out from under the second attacker. But there were too many. A fist connected with my jaw, snapping my head back. Stars exploded in my vision. I stumbled, and another guy tackled me from behind. We went down in the mud. I elbowed him in the face, feeling cartilage crunch, but 2 more jumped on me. I was burying punches into guts and faces, fighting with everything I had, but the weight was too much. They pinned my arms. A boot slammed into my side, then another. "Hold him up!" Brad screamed, walking closer. "Hold him up so I can look at him." They dragged me to my knees. I spit blood into the mud, my vision swimming. Brad stood over me. The gun pointed at my forehead. He was shaking, a manic grin on his face. "You're nothing," Brad whispered. "Just a piece of trash trucker. You protect nobodies, and now you die like a nobody." He cocked the hammer. Click. The sound of the passenger door opening cut through the rain. "Drop the weapon," a voice said. It wasn't Sarah's voice, and it wasn't the weak, trembling voice of the old man from the diner. It was a command, absolute, cold, terrifying. Brad turned. Elias was standing on the step of the truck. He wasn't hunched over. He was standing at full height. In his hands, he held the tire iron I had taken from Brad back at the diner. I had tossed it on the floorboard, but he wasn't holding it like a club. He was holding it like a tomahawk, balanced and ready to throw. "Go back to sleep, Grandpa," Brad laughed, turning the gun toward Elias. "I said drop it," Elias repeated. "Or what?" Elias didn't speak. He moved. For a man of 70, he moved with a speed that defied biology. He threw the tire iron. It wasn't a wild toss. It was a calculated strike. The heavy metal iron spun through the air and struck Brad's wrist, dead center. Crack! Brad screamed, dropping the gun as his wrist shattered. Elias jumped down from the truck. He didn't stumble. He hit the ground running. The goons holding me were so shocked they loosened their grip. That was all I needed. I roared, bucking them off, and delivered a roundhouse punch to the nearest jaw. He went down out cold. I scrambled up, grabbing my hickory stick, but Elias was already at work. One of the attackers, a big guy with a chain, swung at the old man. Elias sidestepped, a fluid, efficient slip, and used the man's own momentum to guide him face first into the bulldozer blade. Another guy tried to grab him. Elias hooked his leg, swept him, and delivered a chop to the throat that left the man gasping for air in the mud. It took 10 seconds. 3 men down, by an old man in a ruined suit. I finished the last one with a gut shot from the stick. We stood there, breathing heavy in the rain. Brad was on his knees, clutching his broken wrist, sobbing. The gun lay in the mud between us. Elias walked over to it. He picked it up, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and tossed the slide into the darkness. "You," Brad whimpered, looking up at Elias with pure terror. "Who are you?" Elias looked down at him. The shame was gone from his face. The fear was gone. "I'm the man who kept you safe while you were sleeping in your crib," Elias said softly. Suddenly, light flooded the construction yard. Red and blue. Sirens wailed from every direction. The highway was swarming with state troopers. They must have been tracking the calls about the shots fired. "Thank God!" Brad yelled, scrambling up, cradling his arm. "Officers, help! These men, they're maniacs. They tried to kill me." A dozen troopers swarmed the lot, weapons drawn. "Everybody down! On the ground!" I dropped to my knees, hands behind my head. Elias did the same, moving slowly. Brad stayed standing, running toward the cops. "I'm Brad Sterling. My father is the district attorney. Arrest these men. They have weapons." A state trooper, a captain by the stripes on his sleeve, stepped forward. He looked at the carnage, the unconscious men, the battered truck. "Cuff them all," the captain barked. "Sort it out later." 2 troopers grabbed me, wrenching my arms back. 2 more grabbed Elias. "No!" Sarah screamed, jumping out of the truck. "Stop! You don't understand!" "Ma'am, step back," the captain ordered. "He's the victim!" Brad shouted, pointing at me. "He attacked me at the diner. He rammed my car." The captain looked at me. "You got anything to say, driver?" "Yeah," I said, my voice rasping. "Check the dash cam." Brad froze. "What?" the captain asked. "My truck," I said, nodding toward the Peterbilt. "It's been recording, the whole time, the diner, the chase, the shots he fired." Brad's face went white. That's illegal. He can't record me." "Public space, public road," I said, staring Brad down. "And I think the shot you put in my door panel is going to be hard to explain to Daddy." The captain walked over to the truck. He saw the bullet hole in the door. He saw the shattered mirror. He looked at Brad, then at the gun lying in the mud parts. "Check the footage," the captain ordered a sergeant. Then he turned to Brad. "You said he attacked you unprovoked?" "Yes, he's crazy." "Then why does his truck have a bullet hole in the driver's side?" Brad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Cuff him," the captain said, pointing at Brad. "You can't do this," Brad screamed as they slammed him against the hood of a cruiser. "Do you know who my father is?" "I know who he is," the captain said calmly, "and I know he's going to be very disappointed." The troopers released me and Elias. Sarah ran to her father, hugging him tight. "Dad, are you okay? Your hands—" Elias looked at his knuckles. They were bruised but steady. "I'm fine, Sarah," he said. The captain walked over to us. He took off his hat, wiping the rain from his eyes. He looked at Elias, really looked at him. He saw the posture. He saw the way the old man held himself. "Sir," the captain said respectfully, "I need to take a statement. But we got a call from D.C., from the senator's security detail. They're looking for an Elias Thorne. They said he's missing." Elias sighed. "I'm Elias Thorne." The captain's eyes widened slightly. "The Elias Thorne, the one from the Valley of Tears." Sarah looked at the captain, confused. "Valley of Tears? My dad was a clerk." The captain looked at Sarah, then at Elias. He understood. "Ma'am," the captain said softly, "your father wasn't a clerk. If he's the man I think he is, he's the reason a whole platoon came home in '69. Elias looked away, ashamed. "I just did what I had to do." "We're running late, Captain," I said, stepping in. "He's got a ceremony at 10, and my truck is a little banged up." The captain nodded. He turned to his men. "Saddle up. I want an escort formation. 2 motors in front, 2 cruisers in back. We are escorting Mr. Thorne to the Vietnam Memorial. Code 3, lights and sirens." "But the investigation?" a rookie trooper asked. "The dash cam has everything we need," the captain said, glaring at Brad, who was being shoved into a paddy wagon. "Get that trash out of here. We have a hero to transport." I looked at Elias. "You ready to finish this run, Ranger?" Elias straightened his tie. He picked up the battered wooden box from the truck seat. "I'm ready," he said. We climbed back into the truck. It was battered, muddy, and missing a mirror, but the engine still purred. As we pulled out onto the highway, the state troopers formed a wedge in front of us. Their lights cut through the darkness, clearing the path. No more roadblocks, no more bullies, just an open road to the capital. Sarah sat in the passenger seat this time, staring at her father. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Elias looked out the window at the passing lights. "Because I didn't want you to know that the world could be that ugly, Sarah. I wanted you to see the good. I kept my eyes on the road, swallowing the lump in my throat. "We'll be there in an hour," I said. "Get some rest." But nobody slept. We rode the wave of blue lights all the way to the district line. The rain finally broke as we crossed the Potomac, leaving the sky a washed-out grey over the National Mall. We didn't look like part of a parade. My Peterbilt was covered in mud, the driver's side mirror was gone, and there was a bullet hole in the door. But when the state troopers peeled off at the entrance to the memorial grounds, the crowd didn't look at the damage. They looked at the man stepping out of the cab. Elias refused the wheelchair they offered. He buttoned his ruined suit jacket, straightened his tie, and took his daughter's arm. I stayed back. This wasn't my moment. I leaned against the grill of my truck, watching from the shadows as the politicians in pristine coats shook his hand. They didn't know he'd just taken down 3 armed men in a mud pit. They just saw the frail old man they wanted for a photo op. But then the senator stepped up to the podium. He didn't talk about politics. He talked about a hill in 1969. He talked about a clerk who refused to evacuate when the perimeter was overrun. For 50 years, the records were sealed. The senator's voice echoed over the silent crowd. We thought it was an airstrike that saved Platoon 4. It wasn't. It was Specialist Elias Thorne. Sarah stood there, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She looked at her father, really looked at him, for the first time. She didn't see the quiet old man who filed papers anymore. She saw the 20-year-old kid who had held the line alone so his brothers could come home. When they unveiled the bronze plaque at the base of the wall, listing the names of the survivors finally recognized, Elias reached out and touched the cold metal. He didn't smile. He just closed his eyes and let out a breath he'd been holding for half a century. The shame evaporated. He wasn't hiding anymore. Sarah buried her face in his shoulder, sobbing. He held her tight, his bruised knuckles white against her coat. I tipped my cap. Nobody saw me do it, and that was fine. I climbed back into the cab. The seat was cold, and the smell of stale coffee and wet dog— wait, no dog this time, just wet flannel and diesel— filled the air. My ribs were throbbing, and I had a long drive to explain the damage to my dispatcher. I released the parking brake. As I rolled away, leaving the cheers and the cameras behind, I checked the rear view one last time. Elias was standing tall, surrounded by light. The road ahead was dark, but that's okay. I know the way. Thank you for watching. And if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice, and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us.